Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking with Eater Portland editor Brooke Jackson Glidden about the best nachos in town. Which restaurants have the craziest combos? Which ones must you try today? So get ready to get hungry because we're climbing a mountain of nachos and we're not coming down for at least 20 minutes. It's Wednesday, October 18th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Before we start on nachos, can I give you a little history about nachos?
Yes, please.
Really? I mean, I'm assuming you know all this because you're a food writer, but just...
I know about everything. Every food.
Okay, so as many of us already assumed, it's not a traditional Mexican dish. It has its origins in the Texas border area. It was made up like in 1943, and the reason it's called nachos is because some dude named Ignacio made it up. And so I don't know if you know this, but in Spanish names, Ignacio, the nickname in Mexican culture for Ignacio is Nacho.
Oh, fun.
And they were like, oh, it's the nacho special. And it was basically made for a white lady. A white lady came through and she was just like, can you just make me something fun, you know? And he was just like, oh, you don't like any of the food we have here? Sure, I'll make something just for you. And he did. And now everybody loves nachos.
So interesting sort of like people pleaser based dish, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you don't want something on the menu. You just want me to make something up. Totally. I'll do that. Yeah. That's a reasonable request to make at a restaurant.
Right? You just could be like, I read through your menu. Just curious, could you make something else?
Wild request, but
I know.
I like nachos, so go off, queen.
Yeah. Whatever. So to start off, I wanted to know what your ideal nacho toppings are because there's so many now.
Yes. So, okay. So when I think about my dream nacho, it is not a nacho in Portland, Oregon. Apologies to the city of Portland. It was a place on campus called Sunset Cantina, and it was like truly a gargantuan pile of nonsense. But I think that getting like a little pile of nachos doesn't make any sense to me. So even more than like specific toppings, I just want enormity and maximalism in a nacho experience. So to me, that means at least 2 different types of cheese. Mm-hmm. And I'm a saucy gal. Like I want things to be like covered in stuff.
A little soggy.
Yeah, and I'm okay with like juicy because like I don't want like if chicken is juicy but the skin isn't perfectly crispy, I'm okay with that. I think a lot of people I know, they prefer it crispy. So anyway, long story long, on nachos, I like at least 1 salsa, guac, sour cream. Like I want like a lot of stuff.
What about meats?
I don't require meats.
Okay.
I think I do require, well, is that true?
What about beans?
I do want a bean. Like I really personally in my heart, I want a bean of some kind on there. It feels wrong if there isn't a bean, and I'm okay with a pinto bean. I'm okay with a black bean. I just want a bean.
A single bean.
One bean. A single bean right on top like a cherry.
That just rolls every time you try to catch it. It's just like, not today.
Or it's like the baby in a king cake. Like, who gets the bean? But yeah, I mean, if we're talking like ideal, yeah, there are beans and there's meat. Mm-hmm. I think like, again, I kind of almost go, because I'm like a saucy gal, I like a guisado kind of vibe. Like if we're doing something like kind of barbacoa-y. I mean, some people it's like they want like crispy carnitas or like something where it's like, okay. I like it messy, you know?
Mm-hmm. I do want to say, Brooke, I Googled these Sunset Cantina Boston nachos.
Yeah.
And I'm noticing something, and it's gonna take us to our next question that I have for you, which is like, what shouldn't you put on nachos? And I'm just going to immediately say lettuce.
Oh, interesting.
I don't want lettuce on nachos. It's so weird. And I'm seeing lettuce on here.
They just put a ton of garbage on there. Like there's so much. And like, okay, I'm coming back from like a party and I'm drunk and I'm
shredded iceberg.
Yes. I will stand by this. I will stand by this. I think I'm going to be canceled. I'm going to be canceled for this. Pico, I think belongs on nachos, period. Like, it's like one of my bottom tier salsas. Like, if I'm like in a salsa scenario and I have chips and salsa, like, I don't want pico there. But on a nacho, I think it's like super crucial. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say no pico on nachos, and I was going to hit the leave button.
I knew it. And like, honestly, I get it. And that would be fair of you. No, I think pico does belong on nachos. But again, part of that, like, handful of fresh shit at the end. Mm-hmm. So, like, pico, and then like, yeah, maybe some shreddis, cilantro. I am like, I'm a big herb person. I think that herbs belong on pretty much everything, but nachos included.
So I'm curious, like, Do you think there's a wrong way to make nachos? Like, have you seen any like just disasters in your travels?
Yes. So when people go really flat with their nachos, which I understand, you're either gonna have everything be too wet and weird, or you're gonna undersauce them and everything's gonna like overcook.
Yeah.
I really hate like a burnt nacho where it's like the cheese, like the chips have browned, the cheese is, and it's like
Congealed and just like a little
yeah,
weird.
it's like
Yeah.
it's like maybe the cheese has separated or broken. It's like, nah, that ain't it. Or it's like they've gone so saucy and they haven't like, again, when they go that super flat kind of route, it's like then you just have like this pool of like meat juice and like sour cream liquid, and you're like, God, this is such a bummer. Like,
Yeah,
so you
yeah.
want like the balance. And I do think that the solution is actually in the chip structure as opposed to distribution of toppings.
Interesting. I once saw someone do like Triscuit nachos and people like swore by it. And I was just like, I don't know how I feel about that, man.
Triscuit is such a weird. I don't think so. I don't think so, honey. I think like it, the texture of a Triscuit
Right.
feels like it'd be so distracting, right?
Yeah. Or just crackers in general.
Yeah, like it's a chip. I'm okay with a wonton nacho, which we will get into, but
Wonton nachos are. Ooh,
that's a whole other thing.
yeah. That's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
One thing that I hate on nachos is actually if they don't incorporate queso. I need like a saucy, creamy, like just
Yeah.
little kid cheese.
It's interesting you say that because I notice when I'm thinking about like the nachos that I like best, they tend to be like a queso style nacho. Like I'm thinking about places with like a melty cheese sauce as opposed to a molten cheese.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that right though. I think in general, and this is something I've talked about with many people, Portland's queso game is pretty lacking. I think we could work on our queso culture, but I do think when someone really nails a cheese sauce, like I'm down, I'm there.
Have you had the queso or have you had the chips at the fixing too?
Yes. So
I think they're solid.
I do. Because they also do the Frito pie there, which I find really fun. I used to hang out there and go to shows there a lot. And so it was like the pregame of the beer and like nachos or Frito pie. I think their nacho is strong. And I think that part of that is they have a good handle on the cheese.
Yeah, they have a good queso. And also something that they introduced, well, it wasn't probably them, but something that I really love that they do is they put pork.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. It's almost like I want to say carnitas, but I don't know if that they're doing some sort of like barbecue pork, shreddy, delicious thing on top. And like, I'm so used to having nachos with like, beans and maybe some steak that the shredded pork, it was like a revelation. I was like, oh yes, this makes so much sense.
This is why I really like a nacho. So like to me again, like there are like camps of nacho styles, and I feel like there is the dive bar nacho and there is the Mexican restaurant nacho. And some dive bar nachos, they do get really cool with the meats, not always though.
Yeah. Well, all right. Well, let's take a quick break here, and when we return, more nachos and more Brooke.
Are you tired of seeing Portland city government be so weak sauce? Progress Portland is a team of locals who come together to advocate for a more diverse, progressive city council in 2024. On our podcast, we interview exciting candidates like Angelina Murillo, running in District 3.
When I talk to people about public safety and public health, I try to explain to them that housing is public health and public safety. Adequate services for addiction, all of that is public safety.
And Steph Routh, running in District 1.
How do we knit together better policies that lift all boats, that we achieve shared prosperity?
District representation and an expanded council will mean a greater voice for the people of Portland. We want a city council that will fight for fair pay and strong unions, housing the homeless, and true police reform. Subscribe to the Progress Portland podcast now, wherever you listen to podcasts, and join our grassroots movement at progressportland.org.
Let's narrow this down.
Yes.
How about your top 3 nachos in Portland based on overall quality? Like, which spots do you think just nail it every time and you would fully recommend to anyone listening?
I'm gonna get some haters for this, but I stand by it. Okay, so yes, it's fussy. Yes, it's chefy. It's also delicious. And fight me, honestly. It's the expatriate nacho. I think expatriate nachos rule. Like, they're so good. So you have a wonton chip. You have like this lemongrassy beef, and you have like this chili cheese sauce. Again, like perfect texture every time, super melty, super tasty. And then they use like muckrat lime in their like version of like a pico. So it's like, again, like the flavor combinations are really wild. I don't know. It's like it's fun every time. It's good every time. And they also, again, have this understanding of how you stack to make sure that everything kind of gets good without getting gross or like soggy. I really like Low Tide Lounge's nachos similarly, in that like they really have a good handle on the stack, like a nacho tower.
I'm looking at them right now. Yeah, that's quite a mountain there.
Right. And again, you want that artistry, you want that feat of architecture, of chip architecture, because it's going to really make it so there's a nice balance of sauce.
And they're more molten nacho. They're more like on the molten cheese side.
Yeah.
So this is your saucy boy right here.
Yeah. I love Low Tide's nachos. And I think like this is one that I think people who go, like, they know this nacho, they love this nacho. This is a nacho that is generally beloved. Now, this is going to be one that I think people are going to call me on as a non-traditional nacho, but I stand by it as being a super good nacho, is the wonton nacho at Grind with Tries, which is the, like, Filipino-Hawaiian place on Alberta. Am I going to get hate for this because of what it is and how far it is from a traditional nacho? Probably.
I mean, you just brought up 2 wonton nachos.
I know. I know. I think that their poke is really good, and like it's huge. It's like absolutely piled high. And then they put it like unagi sauce on it and like seaweed flakes. It's just like, okay. So like to me, if I'm being candid and we're using the word nacho like very liberally, shout out to those nachos. If you're like, Brooke, be serious for once, then I can understand that not being an option, and I will accept that. I would say, and again, this is one that I think people might call me on, they might not like it, but again, because I like a molten cheese sauce, and because I like having a really good choice of meats, I really like Tight Tacos at the Zipper. They have a nacho, and it's like got that bright orange molten cheese vibe, but I think it's the exact flavor I'm looking for. And they got some guac and they've got crema, and they like, again, really go into town on making sure that every chip has a little drizzle of something on it.
This is a flat boy, though.
It is a flat boy. I know this is my exception to the rule.
It is against all the
everything
structural...
I've said. It's an iconoclast. And I think that why this works is
it's queso, that's why.
Distribution. That's what I mean, right? So I want like a cheese sauce. I don't want like it's a good cheese sauce distribution. And again, the way I think they're using squirt bottles. So it's like every chip has got like, it's a perfect little chip of, oh, there's a little crema, ooh, there's a little guac, perfect little bite every time. And I think that consistency of bite is why I'm okay with it.
This is the first nachos that I've seen, like, because every time you say anything to me, Brooke, I Google it just so I can have a visual. And you're right. Like, this looks perfect. I would definitely order this. I've had the expatriate nachos and I love them.
Yes.
And I just want everyone to know they will like knock you on your ass. Like, if you think that is your like little meal before a meal, no, like you're going to eat those and then you're done. It's crazy.
I got so much hate when we did this nacho story. So many people were like, "Ugh, you would recommend the expatriate nachos? That's such a small serving." And I'm like, "In what universe, my dude?" Like
it is so big.
That's a lot of nacho.
So, what are the craziest nachos you've had in town? Like ingredients that you're like, this shouldn't be working right now, but it is. Because what you just told me, you're like, there's poke and stuff. I'm like, well, that
is kind of my answer. Yeah.
So tell me about this place.
Yeah. So Grind with Tries, it was a food cart, and this food cart just
how do you say it? I have no idea what you're saying.
Grind, like Ono Grinds, right?
Yeah.
With Tries, which is the guy's name, basically. But their nachos, they have like just their straight up ahi poke nachos that are a little spicy. I really like the quality of the fish they use. Their sauce is really good. They'll put like unagi sauce on there and like little seaweed flakes. So like, again, it's a stretch from like a traditional nacho. And probably why I think people would be like, girly pop, be serious. But I really do think it's a strong nacho choice. And again, the expatriate nachos, like, so creative to do something where, again, you're taking this sort of like Southeast Asian flavor palette and then sort of like finding natural matches.
Cool. So you're saying like craziest nachos you've had that shouldn't make sense but do make sense is the expatriate, and then the grind with tries poke nachos.
Yeah.
What's cool about nachos is that they're like an all-season food. Like they taste great on a hot day with margs, but they're also kind of comforting on a rainy day if like topped with enough hot stuff. You know, any favorite locations that are just based on environment, like vibes, if you will?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I actually would say that one of my answers to this is the Zipper, just because I really like sitting out on their patio, and like you have the cocktail bar there, so you can kind of get whatever kind of drink you want. And so you're sitting out on this like group patio, you're on one of the picnic tables, you have like a really good cocktail. It's such a perfect kind of nacho experience. It's again like that quality of like, we're all gonna share stuff, we're all gonna like kind of dig into this same pile of chips. I really, really like that. Alternatively, if it's like, I mean, we've talked about this, I really like kind of a dive bar vibe. And so if it's like a rainy day and I'm going for the vibe in that sort of way, I really like the K's in Selwood. I think that like that the K's experience, I think, is a good one for me. And
I've never been to K's bar, but already I love their storefront. It looks pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's like, again, it depends on the time of year. I do think that like it really depends on, do you want to be drinking a fun cocktail on a patio and eating nachos that way? Or are you going for like we're sitting around a bar?
I'm looking at K's food though, and it looks legit. It looks really good.
Yeah. And I wouldn't necessarily call it a dive. It's not necessarily a dive, but like I do think that the vibe in there feels very like classic Portland bar to me. And like, yes, their nachos are great, the house cheese sauce, blah, blah. But like, I think they fry their chips in house too. But like, it's also just something about being in there on like a November night that's like, this rules. This is what I'm going for.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we nailed the assignment.
We did it.
Yeah, we talked about nachos. We named some really great ones in town. I'm really curious, for our listeners, like, what are your favorite nachos? Like, what spots should we check out?
Yes.
I mean, nachos are gonna, if they're done good, like, they're just gonna be awesome. Ignacio had a wonderful idea.
Pour one out for Ignacio, again, accommodating.
Every time.
Accommodating people who really didn't deserve to be accommodated.
Ignacio Anaya, you are a sweetheart. Thank you for bringing nachos to the world. Seriously.
We love you so much. Pour one out for you. But I like the idea of like we're pouring out cheese sauce for you.
Just pouring out queso for Ignacio Nacho Anaya for sure.
Beautiful.
And now for your microdose of news. You might remember the Canby School District's efforts to ban 36 books by Black, Latina, and LGBTQ+ authors, but after all was said and done, they decided on only one book to ban, Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. And personally, I'm against all book bans, but if I had to choose one for kids to maybe not read without context, yeah, that would be the one. And also anything by Henry Miller, I suppose. Also, Portland Public Schools is looking into relocating Cleveland High School to the current Fred Meyer headquarters on Southeast Powell. Though technically not for sale, school officials have toured the site. Cleveland, which is also on Powell, currently has the smallest footprint of any high school in the city and sits at one of Portland's most dangerous pedestrian intersections, not to mention that their brick building is at high risk of collapsing during a larger earthquake. And a listener has heeded my request for recommendations on the best hot toddies in town. Krista says the McMinimans chains have a great hot toddy called the Toddy No. 7. It's made with their in-house herbal liquor. It's so good, and you can enjoy it next to their great fire pits. Thank you, Krista, for the lead. If anyone else has any comments or hot toddy recommendations, hit us up at portland@citycast.fm or leave us a voicemail at 503-208-5448. For even more local news and events, sign up for our daily newsletter, Hey Portland. We'll throw a link in the show notes. That's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.